Part 1. The Rescue. The alarm screamed through the metal halls of Kepler 7 space station. Red lights flashed everywhere, making the shadows dance like demons on the walls. Sergeant Jake Morrison pressed his back against the cold wall and checked his rifle. Sweat dripped down his face even though the station was freezing. "Morrison, where the hell are you?" His squad leader's voice crackled through the radio. "Deck 7, sir. Checking for survivors," Jake replied, moving carefully through the broken corridor. Glass and metal pieces covered the floor. The air smelled like smoke and burning plastic. The Vrex raiders had hit the station hard. These weren't ordinary pirates. They were organized, brutal, and they took no prisoners. Jake had seen what they did to the people they caught. It wasn't pretty. He moved past a destroyed shop, its windows blown out. A teddy bear lay on the floor, covered in dust. Someone's child had dropped it while running. Jake hoped they made it to the escape pods. Another explosion shook the station. The lights went out for a moment, then came back dimmer than before. Emergency power was kicking in. They didn't have much time left. Jake heard something. A small sound like crying, but muffled. He stopped and listened carefully. There it was again. Coming from above, he looked up at the ceiling. There was an air vent, its cover hanging loose. The sound was coming from inside. "Hello?" Jake called softly. "Anyone there?" The crying stopped. Then he heard a small voice speaking in a language he didn't understand. It sounded scared. Very scared. Jake grabbed a chair from the destroyed cafe nearby and climbed up. He pulled the vent cover away completely and looked inside with his flashlight. Two large violet eyes stared back at him. Jake almost dropped his light in surprise. This wasn't human. The creature was small, maybe the size of a 6-year-old child, but its skin looked like it was made of crystals. It shimmered in the flashlight beam, changing colors from blue to silver to pale green. The child, because it had to be a child, had cuts on its arms and legs. Strange silver blood, almost glowing, dripped from the wounds. "Hey there, little one," Jake said gently, the way he talked to his nephew back on Earth. "It's okay. I'm here to help." The alien child didn't understand his words, but it seemed to understand his tone. It reached out a small hand toward him. Jake saw that its fingers were longer than human fingers with what looked like tiny scales instead of skin. "Morrison, the raiders are moving to this sector. Get out now." The radio crackled with urgency. Jake looked at the child, then at his radio. His orders were clear. Evacuate immediately. No delays, no deviations. But he couldn't leave this injured child alone. The Vrex raiders would find it eventually, and Jake knew what they did to the helpless. "I'm getting you out of here," he told the child, even though it couldn't understand him. Jake reached into the vent carefully. The child was shaking with fear, but it didn't pull away. When Jake's hands touched its skin, the child felt warm, warmer than humans. The scales were smooth, like touching water. Gently, Jake pulled the child from the vent. It was lighter than he expected, almost like it was made of air and light. The child wrapped its thin arms around Jake's neck and buried its face against his shoulder. "Morrison, status report," the radio demanded. "On my way, sir," Jake lied. He turned off the radio and tucked it away. The child made soft sounds against his shoulder. Jake realized it was trying not to cry. Even alien kids tried to be brave, it seemed. Jake looked around quickly. He needed to get to the evacuation point. But it was 3 decks down and the elevators weren't working. The emergency stairs would be crawling with raiders by now. But there was another way. The maintenance tunnels. He moved toward the service panel at the end of the corridor, the alien child still clinging to him. The panel was locked, but Jake's rifle took care of that. Behind it was a narrow tunnel that maintenance crews used to move between decks. Jake crawled inside, holding the child carefully against his chest with one arm. The tunnel was dark and hot. Pipes ran along the walls, some of them hissing with steam. The child whimpered when the hot air hit its wounds. "I know it hurts," Jake whispered. "But we have to keep moving." They crawled through the tunnel system for what felt like hours but was probably only 20 minutes. Jake's knees were scraped raw from the metal grating. His back ached from staying hunched over. But the child stayed quiet, trusting him completely. When they reached Deck 4, Jake heard voices through the tunnel wall. Human voices, his squad. "The sergeant's not responding," someone said. "It was Private Chen." "Damn fool probably got himself killed," another voice replied. "That was Corporal Davis. We should have left 5 minutes ago." Jake found an access panel and carefully opened it. He was behind a storage area near the docking bay. Perfect. He could see his squad through the doorway, 4 Marines in full combat gear, waiting by their transport ship. Jake started to crawl out, then stopped. The alien child was looking at him with those big violet eyes. It seemed to understand they were almost safe. For the first time since he found it, the child smiled. It was a beautiful smile, even though its teeth were different from human teeth, smaller, more pointed like a cat's. The child reached up and touched Jake's face gently with its scaled hand. Then it said something in its musical language. Jake didn't understand the words, but he understood the meaning. "Thank you, Morrison." Sergeant Phillips spotted him as he emerged from the storage area. "Where the hell have you been?" "We're leaving now." "Had to clear some areas, sir," Jake replied, still holding the child. Phillips looked at the alien child in Jake's arms. His eyes widened. "What the hell is that?" "Survivor, sir. Found it injured in the vents. It's not human, Morrison. We don't have time for—" "I'm not leaving it," Jake said firmly. "It's just a child." The other Marines gathered around, staring at the alien child. Some looked curious. Others looked nervous. Davis looked disgusted. "It could be dangerous," Davis said. "Could be some kind of trick." The alien child seemed to sense the hostility. It pressed closer to Jake and made a small frightened sound. "Does it look dangerous to you?" Jake asked, his voice cold. "It's hurt and scared. Just like any human child would be." Another explosion rocked the station, closer this time. The lights flickered and went out for several seconds. "We need to go now," Phillips shouted over the alarms. "Everyone on the ship!" Jake ran up the ramp to their transport ship, still carrying the child. The others followed. As soon as they were aboard, the ship's pilot began emergency takeoff procedures. Jake found a seat and buckled himself and the child in. The child was very quiet now, looking around at all the strange human faces and technology. Its wounds were still bleeding that silver blood. "Medical kit," Jake called out. Chen tossed him the first aid kit. Jake tried to clean the child's wounds, but he didn't know alien biology. What if human medicine hurt it? But the cuts looked deep and the silver blood wasn't stopping. The child seemed to understand his worry. It took his hand and guided it to one of the wounds, showing him it was okay to touch. Jake carefully cleaned the cuts and bandaged them with the softest gauze he had. As he worked, other passengers on the ship began to notice the child. There were a few dozen aliens among the human evacuees. Traders, diplomats, tourists who had been on the station. When they saw Jake's small patient, they reacted strangely. A tall, blue-skinned alien with 4 arms suddenly stood up. It stared at the child, then said something in a rapid, clicking language. Another alien, this one covered in fur, heard the words and immediately dropped to its knees. Soon every alien on the ship was either kneeling or bowing toward Jake and the child. The humans looked confused and worried. "What's going on?" Phillips demanded. An alien with tentacles for hair stood up slowly. It spoke careful, accented English. "Human soldier," it said, its voice full of awe. "Do you know what child you carry?" Jake looked down at the small alien in his arms. The child was looking back at him with those beautiful violet eyes, completely trusting. "No," Jake replied honestly. "Just know it needed help." The tentacled alien's skin changed colors. What Jake guessed was amazement. "You carry Princess of the Nitharai, daughter of the Star Queen, most protected child in known galaxy." The words hit Jake like a physical blow. "Princess? Star Queen?" He looked down at the child again. It smiled at him and made a happy sound like a purr. "And you saved her life," the alien continued. "You are now Kethmaran, sacred protector. This is unprecedented." Jake didn't understand what any of that meant. He just knew he had a feeling, a very bad feeling, that his life had just become much more complicated. The child, the princess, curled up against his chest and closed her violet eyes. She felt safe now. For Jake, the feeling of safety was quickly disappearing. Outside the ship's windows, space looked cold and empty. Somewhere out there was the homeworld of these Nitharai people. Somewhere out there was a Star Queen who was probably very worried about her daughter. Jake held the sleeping alien princess closer and wondered what he had gotten himself into. All he had wanted to do was save one scared child. How was he supposed to know she was royalty? The ship jumped to hyperspace, carrying them toward an uncertain future. And in his arms, the most important child in the galaxy slept peacefully, trusting completely in the human soldier who had chosen her life over his orders. Part 2. The Recognition. The human medical bay on the transport ship was not designed for alien children. Dr. Sarah Chen, the ship's medic, looked at the small crystalline princess lying on the examination table and shook her head. I have no idea what I'm doing, she admitted to Jake. Her blood is silver. Her body temperature is 20 degrees higher than human normal, and these scales, I've never seen anything like them. Jake stood beside the table watching the alien child sleep. The princess, he still couldn't believe she was a princess, had been unconscious for 3 hours. Her breathing was steady, but those silver wounds weren't healing like human cuts would. Is she going to be okay? Jake asked. I think so. The cuts aren't too deep, and whatever this silver stuff is, it seems to be clotting on its own. But Jake, Dr. Chen lowered her voice. Do you realize what you've done? Everyone on the ship is talking about it. You saved an alien princess. The other aliens are acting like you're some kind of saint. Jake looked through the medical bay's window. In the main passenger area, the surviving aliens were still kneeling whenever they looked in his direction. Some of them had been praying. At least it looked like praying. They made soft musical sounds and touched their heads to the floor. I just helped a hurt kid, Jake said. That's all. Dr. Chen smiled sadly. I don't think it's going to be that simple. She was right. 20 minutes later, the ship's alarms started blaring. But these weren't danger alarms. These were the alerts that meant another ship was approaching. Captain Rodriguez's voice came over the intercom. All personnel, we have multiple ships approaching. Unknown design. They're huge. Jake ran to the nearest viewport and looked out. His breath caught in his throat. 3 massive ships hung in space near them. They looked like they were made of crystal and light, beautiful and terrifying at the same time. Each ship was easily 10 times larger than their transport. They're hailing us, came the captain's voice again, audio only. They're speaking. Wait, now it's English. They have translators. The ship's speakers crackled to life. A voice spoke, musical, like singing, but with words they could understand. Human vessel. You carry our lost child. We come with gratitude and honor. Prepare for boarding. Jake felt his stomach drop. Boarding didn't sound like a request. Jake, Dr. Chen whispered. The princess is waking up. Jake rushed back to the medical table. The alien child's violet eyes were opening. When she saw Jake, she smiled and reached for him. He picked her up carefully, amazed again at how light she was. The princess said something in her musical language. Jake didn't understand the words, but her tone was happy. She was glad to see him. Princess, he said softly, your people are here. The child looked toward the viewport and her eyes grew wide. She spoke rapidly in her own language, sounding excited. Captain Rodriguez's voice came over the intercom again. Morrison, report to Docking Bay 1 immediately. They're requesting the person who saved their princess. Jake's squad was waiting for him at the docking bay. Sergeant Phillips looked nervous. Whatever happens in there, Phillips said, remember you're representing Earth. Try not to start a war. I'm just returning their kid, Jake replied. But his hands were shaking slightly as he held the princess. The docking bay doors opened with a hiss. Jake expected to see aliens in spacesuits, but instead, 3 figures glided into the bay without any protection. They moved like they were floating on air. The first alien was tall, at least 8 feet, with the same crystalline skin as the princess, but darker, more like polished obsidian. Its movements were graceful, almost like dancing. The second alien was covered in what looked like living armor made of silver metal that moved and shifted like liquid. But it was the third alien that made Jake's heart stop. She had to be the queen. She was enormous, nearly 10 feet tall, with skin that seemed to be made of starlight itself. It shifted and sparkled with colors that Jake couldn't even name. Behind her stretched wings that looked like they were made of pure energy, casting rainbow patterns on the walls. When she saw the princess in Jake's arms, the queen made a sound that was part sob, part song. She moved forward with impossible speed but stopped just short of Jake, as if afraid to come closer. The princess saw her mother and cried out joyfully. She reached toward the queen with both arms. The queen's starlight skin grew brighter, and Jake realized she was crying. Alien tears that looked like liquid diamonds fell from her eyes. Jake stepped forward and carefully held out the princess. She's okay, he said. A little hurt, but she's okay. The queen took her daughter with hands that trembled. For a moment, Jake thought he saw something like relief wash over her alien features. She held the child close and spoke in their musical language. The princess pointed at Jake and spoke rapidly to her mother. Jake caught one word that sounded familiar. His name, or at least their version of it. The Queen looked at Jake for a long moment. Then she did something unexpected. She knelt down, bringing herself closer to Jake's eye level, and spoke in accented but clear English. "You are Jake Morrison, human soldier." "Yes, Your Majesty," Jake replied, not sure if that was the right way to address an alien queen. "You saved my daughter's life. Anyone would have done the same thing." The Queen's expression changed. Her skin color shifted to deeper, more intense hues. "No," she said firmly. "Not anyone. You risked your life for a child you did not know. A child not of your species. You expected no reward. You asked for nothing. This is rare." The armored alien stepped forward and spoke in their musical language. The Queen nodded and looked back at Jake. "My advisor tells me that when the other humans found you with my daughter, they questioned your choice. They thought you foolish for saving her." Jake glanced at his squad. Davis was looking at the floor. "They were just being practical," Jake said diplomatically. "We were in danger. But you were not practical. You chose compassion over safety, life over orders." The Queen stood up again, towering over Jake. "In our culture, such a person has a name, Kethmiran. It means one who protects without thought of self." The princess spoke to her mother again, holding up her bandaged arm and pointing at Jake. "She tells me you cared for her wounds. You comforted her fear. You carried her to safety in your own arms." The Queen's voice grew softer. "She says she felt safe with you. Safer than she has ever felt." Jake didn't know what to say. The princess was looking at him with those big violet eyes, and her expression was pure adoration. It reminded him of how his nephew looked at superheroes in comic books. "She's a brave kid," Jake said finally. "She stayed quiet the whole time, even though she was scared and hurt. Made it easier to get her out." The Queen's skin color shifted again, this time to warmer golden hues. "You honor her courage. This too is rare among the species we have met." The obsidian alien spoke up in English. "I am Commander Zethlos. We have traveled faster than light itself to find our princess. Our queen has not slept since the news of the attack reached us. How do we repay such a debt?" Jake shrugged. "No debt. I just did what was right." The Queen and her commander exchanged a look that seemed meaningful. "This is why," the Queen said, more to her advisor than to Jake. "The council spoke truly. Humans are different." She turned back to Jake. "Jake Morrison, Kethmiran. I am Queen Veltara of the Nithare Empire. This child you saved is Princess Zarathel, heir to 17 star systems and guardian of 300 billion souls." Jake's legs felt weak. 300 billion? That was more people than lived on Earth. "I didn't know," he said. "Of course you did not know. This makes your act more precious, not less." Queen Veltara looked around the docking bay at the other humans. "It is our way to honor those who protect our young. You will come to our homeworld. You will be celebrated as a hero of the Empire. That's very generous, but I have duties here. My squad, my unit." The Queen's expression grew puzzled. "You do not understand. You are Kethmiran now. Sacred protector of the royal house. This is not an honor that can be refused." Jake felt a chill run down his spine. "What exactly does that mean?" Commander Zethlos answered. "It means you are now part of our family. You will live in the palace. You will want for nothing. You will be protected and cherished for the rest of your days. And my duties on Earth?" The Queen and Commander looked at each other again. The Queen's skin color shifted to cooler, more serious tones. "Earth will be compensated for the loss of your service. Generously. But you cannot return there, Jake Morrison. You are too precious now. Too important. What if something happened to you? What if you were hurt? My daughter would never forgive me. And I would never forgive myself." The docking bay fell silent except for the hum of the ship's engines. Jake looked at his squad, then at Captain Rodriguez, who had just entered the bay. Everyone was staring at him. Princess Zarathel spoke to her mother in their musical language. She sounded questioning, almost worried. Queen Veltara smiled at her daughter and spoke back gently. Then she looked at Jake. "My daughter asks if you are unhappy. She can sense emotions as all our people can. She feels your distress." Jake looked down at the princess. Those big violet eyes were looking at him with concern. He forced a smile. "I'm not unhappy. Just surprised." The princess smiled back and said something that sounded like his name. "She says she will take good care of." Part 3. The Golden Prison. Jake had never seen anything like Nithara Prime. The planet looked like a jewel floating in space, blues and greens and purples that shifted like oil on water. As their ship descended through the atmosphere, Jake pressed his face to the viewport and stared in amazement. The cities didn't sit on the ground. They floated in the air like massive crystal flowers, connected by bridges made of light. Waterfalls flowed upward from the surface, feeding lakes that hung suspended in mid-air. Gardens of bioluminescent trees glowed in colors that had no names in any human language. Beautiful, isn't it? Princess Zarathel had somehow gotten away from her guards and was standing beside Jake at the viewport. Her English had improved dramatically during the 3-day journey. The Nithari learned languages frighteningly fast. "It's incredible," Jake said honestly. "I've never seen anything like it." The princess beamed with pride. "Wait until you see the palace. I have my own cloud garden, and there are fish that swim through the air, and crystalline birds that sing in harmony. You'll love it." Jake looked down at her eager violet eyes and felt his heart sink. She was so excited to show him everything. She had no idea that he didn't want to be here. The landing was smooth as silk. The Nithari ship seemed to float rather than fly. When they touched down at the palace spaceport, Jake was amazed to see that even the landing pad was beautiful, made of some kind of stone that glowed softly with inner light. Queen Veltara appeared beside them, moving with that impossible grace her people all seemed to have. "Welcome to your new home, Jake Morrison." Home. The word hit Jake like a punch to the stomach. The palace was beyond anything Jake could have imagined. It was less like a building and more like a living organism made of crystal and light. Walls flowed and curved like frozen water. Ceilings soared impossibly high, supported by pillars that looked like they were carved from solidified starlight. "Your chambers," Queen Veltara announced, gesturing to a set of doors that opened without anyone touching them. Jake stepped inside and his breath caught. The room was enormous, bigger than most houses on Earth. The walls were made of some kind of transparent crystal that showed the floating gardens outside. A bed large enough for 10 people sat in the center, covered in fabrics that shimmered like liquid metal. Furniture that looked like it had grown rather than been built was scattered around the space. "There is a library connected to your chambers," the Queen continued, "with texts from 17 civilizations. The bathing chamber includes a pool fed by the sacred springs. Your clothing will be provided. We had to estimate your size. The gardens are accessible from the balcony." Jake walked to the balcony and stepped outside. The view was breathtaking. The palace gardens stretched out below him, filled with plants that looked like they belonged in dreams. In the distance, he could see the floating cities glowing in the alien sunset. "It's beautiful," Jake said, and meant it. "But Your Majesty, I really can't stay. I have duties back on Earth, people who depend on me." Queen Veltara's expression grew sad. "Jake Morrison, you do not understand. You cannot return to Earth. You are Kethmiron now, sacred protector. Your life is too valuable to risk, but I never agreed to this. I just helped a child. And that help has bound you to us forever. It is our way." The Queen's skin color shifted to deeper, more serious hues. "Do not fear, my friend. You will want for nothing here. Every pleasure, every comfort, every desire, all will be yours. You are family now." After the Queen left, Jake stood alone on the balcony and stared out at the alien sky. 2 moons hung overhead, one silver, one gold. Stars he didn't recognize formed patterns that meant nothing to him. He was trapped. The next few days were a blur of luxury and frustration. Servants appeared whenever Jake needed anything, moving silently and anticipating his wants before he knew he had them. The food was incredible, flavors that human tongues had never experienced. The clothes were more comfortable than anything he'd ever worn. But when Jake tried to contact Earth, he found that his communications were being monitored for security purposes. When he asked about visiting the spaceport, he was told it was too dangerous for someone of his importance. When he suggested taking a walk outside the palace grounds, his guards looked horrified. "But why would you want to leave?" asked Kethvar, his personal attendant. The alien looked genuinely confused. "You have everything you need here. I want to choose where I go," Jake replied. "I want freedom." Kethvar tilted his head, a gesture Jake had learned meant confusion among the Nithari. "Freedom? But you are free. Free from want, free from danger, free from worry. What more freedom could you need?" Jake tried to explain the human concept of personal liberty, but it was like trying to explain color to someone who had never seen. The Nithari simply couldn't understand why someone would want the freedom to be uncomfortable or unsafe. Princess Zarathel visited him every day. She was delighted with his presence and seemed to think they were having a wonderful time together. She showed him her cloud garden, where flowers grew in midair without soil. She introduced him to her pet, a creature that looked like a cross between a butterfly and a small dragon, with wings made of living crystal. His name is Shimmer, she said as the creature perched on Jake's shoulder. He likes you. He only sits on people he trusts. Jake gently stroked the creature's crystalline wings. Shimmer made a sound like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. He's beautiful, Jake said. Zarathel clapped her hands happily. I knew you would love it here. Tomorrow I want to show you the music pools. The water sings when you touch it and it changes colors based on your emotions. Jake forced a smile. That sounds wonderful. But that night, alone in his beautiful prison, Jake decided he had to try something. He couldn't live like this, no matter how comfortable it was. He waited until the palace was quiet, then carefully made his way through the corridors. The Nithare didn't seem to believe in locks. All the doors opened at his approach. Maybe they trusted him, or maybe they simply couldn't imagine anyone wanting to leave paradise. The palace was enormous, but Jake had always had a good sense of direction. He made his way toward what he thought was the main entrance, moving carefully through the flowing, organic hallways. He almost made it. Jake Morrison. The voice came from behind him, musical and sad. He turned to find Queen Veltara standing in the hallway, her starlight skin dim with what looked like disappointment. Your Majesty, I was just exploring. You were trying to leave. It wasn't a question. Why? Jake took a deep breath. Because this isn't my home. Because I didn't choose this. Because being comfortable isn't the same as being happy. The Queen studied him for a long moment. Her skin colors shifted through patterns Jake was beginning to recognize as deep thought. You are unhappy here, with us? It's not that I don't appreciate what you've done. This place is incredible, but I need to make my own choices. I need to be able to leave if I want to.
Even if I choose to come back. But why would you want to leave?
You have everything here. Safety, comfort, purpose. On Earth you could be hurt. You could die. Here you are protected. Sometimes being alive isn't the same as living, Jake said quietly. The Queen's expression grew troubled. I do not understand. You speak in riddles. Your Majesty, what if someone forced you to stay in a beautiful room forever? What if they gave you everything you wanted but never let you choose for yourself? Would you be happy? But I am the Queen. I must stay. I must protect my people. I must make choices for the good of all. This is my duty. But it's your choice to accept that duty. You could walk away from being queen if you really wanted to. I can't walk away from being your Keth Mirren. The Queen was quiet for a long time, her skin cycling through colors Jake had never seen before. Finally, she spoke. You truly wish to return to Earth? To your small, dangerous planet? To your brief, fragile life? I want the choice. Even if I choose to stay here, I want it to be my choice. But if you leave, you might not return. You might be killed. My daughter would be heartbroken. She loves you already. And I love her too. But love shouldn't be a cage. The Queen's skin suddenly flared bright with silver and gold. For a moment, Jake thought she was angry. Then he realized she was crying again. Your words cause me pain, Jake Morrison, but they also cause me understanding. My daughter speaks of you constantly. She says you are sad even when you smile. She asks me why her Keth Mirren is not happy in paradise. She can sense emotions, can't she? All our people can. It is our gift and our curse. We feel what others feel. And you, the Queen's voice broke slightly. You feel like a caged bird, beautiful and comfortable but dying inside. They stood in silence for a moment, surrounded by the soft glow of the palace walls. If I let you go, the Queen said finally, will you return? Will you visit us? My daughter, she has never had a friend like you. Someone who protected her without knowing who she was. Someone who loves her for herself, not her crown. Jake's heart ached at the pain in the Queen's voice. I would visit. I would call her. I would be her friend for life. But I need to know I'm here because I choose to be, not because I have to be. The Queen nodded slowly. I will consider this. But first you must promise me something. What? One more day. Give me one more day to show you something. Then if... Part 4. The Rebellion of Understanding Queen Veltara came for Jake at dawn. The alien sunrise painted the sky in colors that reminded him of the Queen's shifting skin, gold and silver and deep purple. She wore simple robes instead of her royal regalia, and her expression was sadder than Jake had ever seen it. "Come," she said quietly. "It is time you learned our history." They walked through parts of the palace Jake had never seen before. These corridors were older, made of darker crystal that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. The walls were covered with images, not paintings, but something that looked like frozen memories trapped in the stone. "These are the memorial halls," the queen explained. "Here we remember what we lost." They stopped before a large image embedded in the wall. It showed a planet that looked like Nithara Prime, but different. The floating cities were smaller, and the landscape below was filled with structures that reached toward the sky like reaching hands. "This was Nithara Origin," Queen Veltara said softly. "Our first home." "Beautiful, wasn't it?" Jake studied the image. "What happened to it?" The queen's skin darkened to deep grays and blacks. "The Devourer fleet. They came from the edge of the galaxy, consuming everything in their path. Planets, stars, entire civilizations. We had warning. Other species fled before them. But we were arrogant. We thought our power, our technology could protect us." She moved to the next image. This one showed the same planet but burning. The floating cities were falling from the sky. The reaching towers were broken and dark. "We evacuated what we could. 3 billion souls lived on Origin. We saved 200 million. The queen's voice was barely a whisper. "The rest, we left them behind because we did not have enough ships. Because we waited too long to believe the danger was real." Jake felt a chill run down his spine. "I'm sorry. I didn't know." "Of course you didn't know. Why would you? This was 3,000 years ago by your reckoning." The queen moved to another image. This one showed huge ships carrying people away from their dying world. "We swore that day that we would never again lose what we loved. Never again would we fail to protect our people." They walked deeper into the memorial halls. More images lined the walls. Battles, evacuations, grief. Jake began to understand something about the Nitharae that he hadn't before. They weren't just protective by nature. They were terrified of loss because they had lost everything once. "After Origin fell, we became nomads for 1,000 years, the queen continued. "We searched for a new home, always looking over our shoulders for the Devourer fleet. When we found this world, we swore to make it impregnable. No one we love would ever be left behind again." They reached a circular chamber at the heart of the memorial halls. In the center stood a statue made of the same dark crystal as the walls. It showed a Nitharae figure, tall, graceful, with wings spread wide. But the figure's skin was dull, lifeless. "This is Kethmiran Prime," the queen said. "The first sacred protector. He was my ancestor, many generations removed. When the Devourer fleet attacked Origin, he stayed behind to help others escape. He could have saved himself, could have fled with the royal family. Instead, he chose to die protecting strangers." Jake stared at the statue. "He was human." "No, he was Nitharae. But he had the same spirit you showed when you saved Zarathel, the same willingness to risk everything for others." The queen's skin began to brighten slightly. "When we learned of your action, the Council of Elders said it was impossible. They said other species were not capable of true Kethmaran spirit. I believed them wrong. You proved me right. So that's why you can't let me go. Because your first protector died, because I failed him." The queen's skin flared bright with pain. "I was there, Jake Morrison. I was a young princess fleeing in the evacuation ships. I saw Kethmiran Prime fighting the Devourers, holding the spaceport so others could escape. I could have ordered the ships to wait. I could have rescued him. Instead, I chose to save the many over the one." Jake felt his anger dissolving into understanding. "You were trying to save your people, and I let him die for it. For 3,000 years I have carried that guilt. When you saved my daughter, when you showed the same spirit as Kethmiran Prime, I swore I would not make the same mistake again. I would not lose another protector to my failures." The queen moved to touch the dark statue, her starlight skin contrasting with the lifeless crystal. "Can you understand now why I cannot let you go? Why I must keep you safe?" Jake looked at the statue, then at the queen. Her pain was real, her fear genuine, but something was bothering him about her story. "Your Majesty, you said Kethmiran Prime chose to stay behind." "Yes, he chose duty over safety, the same choice you made. But it was his choice. You didn't force him to stay. He decided for himself." The queen's skin colors shifted to patterns of confusion. "Of course. He was Kethmiran. The choice was obvious. Then why are you taking that choice away from me? The queen stared at him, her expression unreadable. For a long moment, the only sound in the chamber was the soft humming of the crystal walls. I do not understand. Jake stepped closer to the statue. Your ancestor died because he chose to protect others. That choice, that sacrifice, made him a hero. But if someone had forced him to stay, if they had locked him up to keep him safe, would he still be a hero? He would still be alive, would he? Or would he be like me, living but not alive, safe but not free? The queen's skin began cycling through rapid color changes, confusion, realization, pain, understanding. You speak of paradox. If I protect you by controlling you, am I destroying what made you worth protecting? I think maybe you are. Jake's voice was gentle but firm. Your ancestor was great because he chose to sacrifice. I'm nothing special because I have no choice at all. The queen sank to her knees beside the statue, her massive form suddenly seeming small and fragile. Then I have failed again. I sought to honor you by making you safe, but I have dishonored you by making you a prisoner. Jake knelt beside her. Not a prisoner, a guest. But a guest should be able to leave when they want to. Even if leaving means you might die. Even if leaving means I might lose you as I lost him? Jake thought of Princess Zarathel, of her bright violet eyes and trusting smile. He thought of the wonder and beauty of this world, of the kindness the Nitherae had shown him. He thought of his squad back on Earth, probably thinking he was dead by now. Your Majesty, what if I promised to be careful? What if I promised to come back and visit? What if we found a way for me to be your Kethmiran without being your prisoner? The queen looked up at him, hope flickering in her shifting colors. How? I don't know yet, but maybe we can figure it out together. They sat in silence for a while, surrounded by the memories of loss and sacrifice. Finally, the queen spoke again. There is something else you must know, something that makes this more complicated. Jake felt his heart sink. What? My daughter. Zarathel. She has bonded with you emotionally. Among our people, such bonds are rare and precious. If you leave and do not return, it will cause her great pain, possibly permanent damage. What kind of damage? Our people feel emotions more deeply than yours. When we love someone and lose them, especially as children, it can break something inside us that never heals. She has already lost so much in her short life. Her father died when she was very young. You are the first person outside our family that she has truly loved. Jake felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. So if I leave, I hurt her. If I stay against my will, I slowly die inside. Yes. Jake stood up and paced around the chamber, his footsteps echoing off the crystal walls. There had to be a solution, some way to honor both his need for freedom and Zarathel's need for love. What if, he began slowly, what if we redefined what it means to be Kethmiran? The queen looked up at him. How? Your ancestor chose to protect others by staying. What if I chose to protect Zarathel by leaving, but leaving in a way that keeps our bond strong? What if being Kethmiran meant being someone she could always count on, even from far away? I do not understand. Jake stopped pacing and faced the queen. What if I went back to Earth, back to my duties as a soldier, but I stayed connected to her? What if I promised that whenever she truly needed me, I would come? What if I visited regularly, called her, sent her messages? What if I became her friend and protector across the stars instead of her prisoner in paradise? The queen's skin began to brighten with cautious hope. You would do this? You would maintain the bond even from such distance? If it meant we were both free to choose, yes. The queen stood up, towering over Jake once again. But for the first time since he'd met her, she didn't seem intimidating. She seemed hopeful. This has never been tried before. The council would think it madness. Sometimes the best ideas seem crazy at first. The queen was quiet for a long moment. Then slowly she began to smile. It was the first time Jake had seen her truly smile, and it transformed her alien features into something beautiful and warm. Jake Morrison, she said, I believe you may be the wisest Kethmiran we have ever had. Will you help me convince my daughter that this new way might be better than the old way? Jake smiled back. I think she might surprise you with how well she understands. As they left the memorial halls, Jake felt something he hadn't felt since. Part 5. The True Honor Princess. Zarathel was waiting for them in the palace gardens when they returned from the memorial halls. She sat beside her favorite fountain, the one where the water sang in harmonious notes as it fell. Shimmer, her crystal-winged pet, perched on her shoulder, its wings catching the morning light. When she saw Jake and her mother approaching, Zarathel smiled brightly. But then her expression changed. Even from a distance, she could sense the emotional weight they carried. Jake, Mother, why do you both feel so sad and hopeful at the same time? Queen Veltara knelt beside her daughter, bringing herself down to the child's eye level. My precious one, we need to talk about something important. Jake sat on the fountain's edge, listening to the musical water while he watched the interaction between mother and daughter. The Nithari way of communicating was fascinating. They spoke with words, but also with colors that shifted across their skin, conveying emotions that language couldn't capture. Is Jake leaving? Zarathel asked quietly. Her skin had turned pale silver. The color Jake had learned meant fear. Maybe, Queen Veltara replied honestly. That depends on many things. But first, I want you to understand why. For the next hour, the Queen explained everything to her daughter. She told her about Jake's need for freedom, about the difference between being protected and being trapped, about the choice their ancestor Kethmaran Prime had made long ago. She spoke gently but didn't hide the difficult truths. Zarathel listened with the serious attention that only children can give to truly important conversations. Shimmer seemed to sense her mood and nuzzled closer to her neck, making soft chiming sounds of comfort. When her mother finished speaking, Zarathel was quiet for a long time. Her skin cycled through different colors: silver fear, golden thoughtfulness, deep blue sadness, and finally, warm green understanding. So Jake feels like a caged bird in our beautiful palace? She asked finally. Yes, little one. Even though we gave him everything we thought he wanted. Zarathel turned to look at Jake directly. Is that true? Are you unhappy here with us? Jake chose his words carefully. I love you, Zara. I love your mother and I love this beautiful world. But I need to know that I'm here because I choose to be, not because I have to be. Like how I choose to hug you instead of being ordered to? Exactly like that. The princess nodded slowly. If Mother ordered me to hug you every day, it wouldn't mean the same thing, would it? Even if I wanted to hug you anyway. Jake felt his heart swell with pride. This child was incredibly wise for her age. That's right. The choice is what makes it meaningful. Zarathel stood up and walked to the center of the garden, where a tree with silver leaves grew in a spiral toward the sky. She touched its trunk gently, and the leaves chimed like bells in response. I don't want Jake to be sad, she announced, even if it means he goes away sometimes. Queen Veltara's skin brightened with surprise. Are you certain, my daughter? He might be gone for long periods. He might be in danger on other worlds. But he'll still be my Kethmiran, won't he? Zarathel looked at Jake with those large violet eyes. He'll still protect me when I really need him. Always, Jake promised. No matter where I am, no matter what I'm doing, if you need me, I'll come. That's a promise. And you'll call me? And visit? And tell me about the other worlds you see? Every week? Maybe more. Zarathel's skin began to glow with the warm gold color that meant joy. Then it's not really goodbye, is it? It's just, see you later. Jake stood up and opened his arms. Zarathel ran to him and hugged him tightly. You're the bravest, smartest princess in the galaxy, he told her. And you're the best Kethmiran ever, she replied. Her voice slightly muffled against his chest. Queen Veltara watched them with an expression of wonder. My daughter, are you truly comfortable with this arrangement? Zarathel pulled back from Jake and looked at her mother seriously. Mother, remember what you taught me about the crystal birds? What about them? You said that crystal birds only sing their most beautiful songs when they're free to fly wherever they want. If you cage them, even in the most beautiful cage, they stop singing and eventually they die. The queen's skin shifted to deep purple, the color of profound realization. Yes, I remember. Jake is like a crystal bird. His most beautiful song is his choice to protect others. If we cage him, even in our beautiful palace, his song will die. And then he won't really be Kethmiran anymore, will he? Jake stared at the young princess in amazement. In her simple way, she had understood something that it had taken him and her mother hours to work through. Queen Veltara was crying again, but these were tears of pride and love rather than pain. My wise daughter, you have taught your mother something today. You have shown me that love means wanting someone to be their truest self, even if that self sometimes flies far away. So Jake can go back to Earth? If that is what he chooses, yes. 3 days later, Jake stood in the royal spaceport beside a sleek Nithari ship that would take him back to human space. Queen Veltara had insisted on providing transportation, and Jake had to admit their ships were much faster and more comfortable than anything humans had built. A small crowd had gathered to see him off. Commander Zethlos was there, along with several other Nithari nobles. Kethvar, his former attendant, looked confused but wished him well. Even some of the servants had come to say goodbye, but it was Princess Zarathel's goodbye that mattered most. She had made him something, a small crystal pendant shaped like a star. "It's connected to one I have," she explained, hanging it around his neck. "When you touch it, mine will glow warm. When I touch mine, yours will do the same. So we'll always be connected no matter how far apart we are." "It's perfect," Jake said, touching the crystal gently. Immediately, a matching pendant around Zarathel's neck began to glow with soft light. "And I have something else for you," she continued, producing a small device that looked like a cross between a phone and a piece of jewelry. "This is a quantum communicator. It works instantly across any distance. You can call me anytime, and I can call you." Jake accepted the device with reverence. Technology like this was centuries ahead of anything humans possessed. "Are you sure I should have this?" Queen Veltara nodded. "It is a gift freely given to our Kethmiran. Use it wisely." "There's one more thing," Zarathel said, her voice suddenly shy. She reached into a small bag and pulled out Shimmer, her crystal-winged pet. "I want Shimmer to go with you." "Zara, I can't take your pet. You love him. That's why I want you to have him. He'll be lonely without me, but he likes you almost as much as he likes me. And—" She paused, her skin turning a soft pink color that Jake had learned meant embarrassment. "And he can sense emotions from very far away. If I'm ever really scared or in trouble, he'll know and he can tell you." Jake looked at the small creature perched on Zarathel's hand. Shimmer looked back at him with intelligent eyes and made a soft chiming sound. "He says he wants to go with you," Zarathel translated. "He says it will be an adventure." Jake gently extended his hand and Shimmer hopped onto his finger. The little creature's crystal wings tickled his skin. "Thank you," Jake said softly. "All of you. For everything." Queen Veltara stepped forward. "Jake Morrison, Kethmaran of the Royal House of Nithara, you have taught us that the greatest protection comes not from walls or cages, but from trust and freely given love. You have redefined what it means to be a sacred protector. Go with our blessing and know that you will always have a home here when you choose to return." Jake hugged Zarathel one last time. "I'll see you soon, little princess. And I'll call you tomorrow. Promise?" "Promise." The journey back to Earth took only 2 days in the Nithare ship. When Jake arrived at the Sol system, he found that his military unit had declared him missing in action. His return caused quite a stir, especially when he arrived in an alien ship with a crystal-winged pet and technology that human scientists could only dream of. But that was just the beginning. True to his word, Jake called Princess Zarathel every day. He told her about Earth, about snow and rain, about dogs and cats, about human children and their games. She told him about her lessons, her new pets, her growing understanding of leadership. The quantum communicator changed Jake's life in ways he hadn't expected. Through it, he became an unofficial ambassador between Earth and the Nithari Empire. Trade agreements were negotiated. Scientific knowledge was shared. Cultural exchanges began. More importantly, Jake found a new purpose. He remained a soldier, but now he also served as Earth's first interstellar protector. When threats emerged that endangered both human and Nithari space, Jake was there to coordinate the response. And when, 3 years later, pirates attacked a trade convoy carrying Nithari diplomats, Jake's quantum communicator chimed with an emergency call. Princess Zarathel's face appeared on the screen, older now but still with those same trusting violet eyes. "Jake, we need our Kethmiran. Can you come?" Jake was on a Nithari ship within the hour, racing toward the battle at faster than light speed. By the time he arrived, the pirates had been driven off, but they had managed to damage several civilian ships. Jake spent 2 weeks helping with rescue operations and negotiations with the pirate clans. When he finally returned to the palace on Nithara Prime, Zarathel was waiting for him in the gardens.